Sudden oak death has killed almost 50 million oak and tan oak, while infecting close to 200 million more tan oak, oak, and bay laurel.
Now, I attended the Mount Tam Summit 2 years ago, and there was a fair amount of frustration within the audience and some of the speakers that we didn't have that number. We couldn't say how many trees had been infected or killed during the sudden oak death outbreak. That frustration, I think, is well justified. I'm glad that we now have a number. The bad news, it is, not surprisingly, mind-bogglingly large. Now let's examine a little bit more closely where those infected trees occur, where the dead trees occur, and how we came up with this estimate. Let's first deal with the problem of estimation. How does one come up with a number of infected trees or dead trees at such a large spatial scale, such as the whole of central and northern coastal California? And the answer is it's not trivial. One needs a combination of data sources, one of which is extensive measurements on the ground, and the other is any kind of remote sensing, satellite or aircraft-based measurements. Okay, so here's what we did. In terms of measuring things on the ground, we've worked throughout California, Del Norte, Humboldt County, monitoring individual plots, both monitoring plots that are known to be infected or became infected over the course of about 2 decades of measurements, or plots that are within this area but have not yet become infected. And what you can see here is you've got high concentrations of infections in Marin, in Sonoma County, in southern Humboldt County, and especially in Big Sur. These field plots are essential for understanding the density of infections and the density of dead trees, but they can't tell you how many infections occurred across the entire area. So in order to do that, you have to combine these other kinds of data sources. And those can be based in a GIS, they can be topographic or other environmental variables that we know to affect infection and mortality, as well as a good comprehensive map of where these hosts occur. Those are all publicly available data sets. You can download them. In fact, everything that I'm talking about now, you can download and recreate if you like. These are some of the environmental variables. We map them, and then we combine them with the distribution of hosts and the distribution, the known distribution of Phytophthora morum to come up with an estimate of infected number of infected or dead trees on a per unit area. Okay, so those are the technical details. Here's what we found. We see substantial concentrations of infections in these areas that are known to already be invaded. So I pointed out Big Sur, I pointed out the Bay Area, particularly Marin and Sonoma counties. There's lots of bay laurel in these areas, and there's lots of tan oak in these areas. Infection in bay laurel and tan oak is particularly important for understanding this disease because this is how the pathogen continues to spread in the landscape. Sporulation happens on the leaves of bay laurel and on the leaves and twigs of tan oak. So not only are new infections within the landscape and new mortality, tree mortality events in the landscape driven by these two species, this is also the source of persistence of this disease in coastal California. All right, so lastly, where are the dead trees? And since bay laurel, the infections in bay laurel are not lethal, I am of course not showing bay laurel here. Instead, I'm showing coast live oak and tan oak. And again, coast live oak infections can be lethal, but they don't support sporulation. There's no spread here. So here's where we have the highest concentration of coast live oak mortality. It occurs in the range of coast live oak, which ends in the most southern part of Humboldt County and really kind of tapers off in Sonoma County. There's substantial mortality of coast live oak in Marin as well as in Big Sur. Tan oak the mortality occurs much further north in Oregon and in Humboldt County, and we're particularly concerned about the spread and impacts in Humboldt County because it really has the potential to take off exponentially and be even worse than we've experienced in Marin and Sonoma, which has been substantial. Thousands and thousands of dead trees, hundreds of thousands of dead trees in these counties. The scale at which these two tree mortalities are occurring are very different between coast live oak and tan oak. The disease is substantial in tan oak, it's extremely damaging to our forests, and it's problematic in Marin because of all the additional fuels and dead material that's accumulated.